Imagine sitting down with a friend, maybe over a cup of coffee, and the conversation turns to the future. It feels big and a little uncertain, right? You have probably heard the phrase, the Great Reset, or maybe you have seen a headline about a world where you will own nothing and be happy. It sounds jarring, and for a lot of us, our first instinct is to push back hard. That feeling, that immediate no, is a powerful force. It is our built-in guardian, the part of us that wants to protect what we know and what we have. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, that surge of certainty that washes over you when an idea challenges your worldview. It is a universal experience, a fundamental part of being human. This idea of a great reset is most closely associated with a man named Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum. Now, before your guard goes up again, let us just try to understand his core idea in the simplest terms possible. He is talking about using the massive changes of our time, things like the digital revolution and the need for a greener economy, as a unique opportunity. He is not talking about a secret plot, but about a conscious choice to build a new kind of system that is more sustainable and fair, rather than just patching up the old one and waiting for the next crisis. He frames it as a proactive move. In his own words, he said, "We have only one planet, and we know that climate change could be the next disaster with even more dramatic consequences for humankind." The core idea is about connection, about recognizing that a problem on one side of the globe eventually affects us all, and that our old ways might not be equipped to handle these new global challenges. This is where things get really interesting, because this idea bumps right up against how our minds naturally work. We are wired for the immediate, the tangible, the personal. Our instinct is to think about our own house, our own car, our own family. The concept of a global reset that prioritizes long-term planetary health over short-term individual ownership feels abstract and threatening. It triggers that deep-seated instinct to protect what is ours. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they feel safe, like a well-worn path we know how to walk. Let me ask you a question that has nothing to do with politics or the future. Remember when you were a kid and you realized a belief you held was not quite true? Maybe it was about Santa Claus, or maybe it was a simple idea about how friendships work. That moment of realization was not just about gaining new information. It was a subtle shift in your entire understanding. It was a little uncomfortable, maybe even a little sad, but it also opened up a new, more mature way of seeing the world. We all have these moments throughout our lives where a deeper awareness slowly wins out over our initial, instinctive thinking. That tension is always there. Our first reaction is often emotional and self-protective, but if we sit with it, a more nuanced understanding can emerge. This is not about being wrong or right. It is about the natural evolution of how we see things. Now bring that back to Klaus Schwab and his vision. The reason it causes such a strong reaction is that it asks us to do that on a massive scale. It asks us to question the very foundation of what we consider success and security, like owning property. It feels like it is asking us to give something up, and our instinct rebels. But what if that initial feeling of resistance is the same as that childhood feeling, just on a much larger stage? What if we are clinging to the familiar idea of ownership, not because it is the only way, but because it is the only way we have ever known? This is how we sometimes fool ourselves. We mistake our initial protective reaction for the entire truth. We see a headline like "You will own nothing," and our instinctive mind, the part that fears loss, takes over completely. It does not want to explore the deeper context or the potential long-term benefits that might lie on the other side of that uncomfortable shift. It just says no. Klaus Schwab principles are ultimately about interdependence, about systems working together. And in a way, that is what we are struggling with inside our own minds. the interdependence between our quick, emotional instincts and our slower, more aware understanding. One is not better than the other, they both serve a purpose. But growth happens when we let the deeper awareness have a voice. The friction we feel about the Great Reset is not just about the world out there, it is a mirror of the constant negotiation happening inside each of us, between holding on and letting go, between the familiar past and an uncertain future. This cracks open the entire conversation and forces us to look at the path ahead, not as a single event, but as a journey we are all on. A journey with 3 distinct parts that each of us will experience. We start at the very beginning, in a place of simplicity. This is where things are black and white, where our understanding of ownership, work, and community is based on the models we grew up with. We believe that hard work leads to owning a home, a car, and having possessions that signify security and success. Our reactions here are instinctive, a gut-level response to any suggestion of change that feels like a threat to these foundational beliefs. This is the knee-jerk reaction that Klaus Schwab contrasts with a more thoughtful approach. It is the immediate no, the dismissal of new ideas, because they clash with our established, simple view of how the world should work. Then we enter the tough middle phase, and this is where things get genuinely confusing and complicated. This is the part of the journey Schwab himself points to when he discusses the immense challenges and disruptions of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The old rules seem to stop applying, and the new ones are not yet written. We see the economic ground shifting, traditional jobs evolving or disappearing, and new concepts like digital assets and shared economies emerging. You might be someone who resists change at first, holding tightly to the old ways because they feel safe. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions, and this phase is defined by that unease. It is filled with noise, conflicting information, and a sense of losing control. Our simple worldview is shattered, and we are left navigating a landscape without a reliable map. This is the valley of confusion between the mountain of the past and the plateau of a new understanding. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, because the old knee-jerk responses no longer seem to fit the new, complex problems we face daily, from how we pay for things to how we define a career. But if we move through that discomfort, a new clarity begins to emerge. This is not about blindly accepting a pre-packaged future, but about developing a more nuanced and thoughtful response. We start noticing patterns within the chaos. The discussion shifts from simply owning physical things to understanding access, value, and sustainability. We begin to ask better questions rather than just issuing flat rejections. We move from asking, how do I keep everything I have, to what truly provides security and meaning in a changing world. This is where we can blend the best of the old with the potential of the new. This thoughtful response, as Schwab frames it, is what allows for constructive participation in shaping what comes next. It is the difference between fearing a loss of ownership and exploring what kind of ownership or access models actually serve our communities and our planet better. We begin to see that security might not be a deed to a house, but a resilient network, a valuable skill set, or a stake in a decentralized system. This new clarity is earned through the struggle of the middle phase. It is a more mature perspective, grounded not in fear of change, but in the pragmatic understanding that the world is indeed changing, and our choice is in how we respond to it. The journey ends not with a destination of having all the answers, but with the tools to navigate the questions with more wisdom and less fear. Through this discomfort, we begin to see the faint outline of a different path, one we might have previously dismissed as too difficult or not meant for us. It's in this raw, unvarnished state that our defenses are down just enough for a new kind of curiosity to spark. We start to question not just the immediate problem causing our pain, but the very framework we've been using to navigate our lives. The rules we accepted, the goals we were told to chase, the definition of success that was handed to us. It all starts to feel a bit foreign, like wearing someone else's ill-fitting clothes. This questioning isn't a rebellion for its own sake. It's a quiet, internal search for something that resonates more deeply with who we are discovering ourselves to be. This process of re-evaluation is rarely a dramatic, overnight transformation. It's more like the slow, patient work of untangling a knotted necklace. We gently work at one loop and then another, sometimes having to put it down and come back to it later with fresh eyes. We might look at our career and ask if it truly aligns with our values, or if we're just performing a role we fell into years ago. We might examine our relationships and consider whether they are built on mutual growth or simply on habit and comfort. We might even question our own reactions and patterns, wondering why certain things trigger us so intensely, while others roll right off our backs. This isn't about casting blame outward, but about understanding our own role in the narratives we live. As we sit with these questions, a fascinating psychological phenomenon often begins to surface. Something known as the Barnum effect. This is our natural tendency to find personal meaning in statements that are actually very vague and applicable to almost anyone. You know the feeling. Reading a horoscope or a personality profile and thinking, wow, this is so me. It's uncanny how accurate it seems. But in this context of self-discovery, we can actually use this tendency to our benefit. We can consciously choose to lean into the positive, empowering generalizations. When we tell ourselves, I am capable of navigating change, or I am learning to respond with more patience, our minds, eager to find truth in these statements, start to seek out evidence to confirm them. We essentially become active participants in creating a new, more supportive self-narrative. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because your life is suddenly devoid of complexity, but because you have a clearer sense of your own priorities. That mental noise of shoulds and ought tos begins to quiet down, replaced by a more intuitive sense of what feels right for you. You might say no to an invitation that would have previously filled you with dread and feel not guilt, but relief. You might choose a simpler weekend, finding more joy in quiet moments than in a frantic schedule. It's in these small, consistent choices that the new framework is built, brick by brick. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much, not because the frustrations have vanished, but because their emotional center of gravity has shifted. The small stuff really does start to feel like small stuff. This shift isn't about achieving a state of perpetual happiness or eliminating all problems. That's a fantasy. It's about building resilience and developing a different relationship with life's inevitable challenges. It's the difference between being a boat tossed around by every wave and being the ocean itself, vast, deep, and able to hold the waves within you. The struggles don't disappear, but they lose their power to capsize you. You begin to understand that discomfort is not a sign of failure, but often a sign of growth, a signal that you are pressing against the edges of your old self, stretching into new territory. This journey inward, as personal as it feels, paradoxically connects us more deeply to others. When we stop pretending to have it all figured out, we create space for genuine connection. We can listen to a friend's struggle without the immediate urge to fix it, offering, instead, the powerful gift of presence. We can see the shared humanity in the stranger on the bus, recognizing that everyone is fighting a hard battle we know nothing about. Our judgments soften, both of ourselves and of others, because we understand that everyone is navigating their own labyrinth of inherited beliefs and personal experiences. We realize that our true security doesn't come from being right or being perfect, but from being authentically connected. This authenticity becomes our new compass. It guides us toward work that feels meaningful, relationships that feel nourishing, and a life that feels like our own. We stop comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. The energy we once spent maintaining a facade is now freed up for creation, for love, for simply being. We start to make choices based on internal alignment rather than external validation. This is where we find a profound sense of agency. We are no longer just characters in a story written by someone else. We are the authors, thoughtfully choosing the next plot point, the next theme, the next chapter. Together we discover that this entire process, from the first pang of discomfort to the gradual embrace of a new way of being, is about integrating all parts of ourselves. We learn to welcome the uncertain parts, the vulnerable parts, the parts we once thought were weaknesses, understanding that they are essential to our wholeness. This integration brings a quiet confidence, a steadiness that doesn't need to announce itself. It's a deep knowing that you can handle what comes, not because you have all the answers, but because you trust your capacity to learn and adapt and find your way. And it is in this integrated whole state that we can truly appreciate the feeling Klaus Schwab pointed to when he observed that true freedom feels like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. For so long, we've been walking through life in footwear that was perhaps stylish or practical by someone else's standards, but that pinched our toes and gave us blisters. We thought the discomfort was just part of the journey. But now, having untied those laces and slipped them off, we feel the solid ground beneath our feet for the first time. The relief is palpable, a release of pressure we didn't fully realize we were carrying. We can walk taller, move more freely, and step with a new assurance into a future we are consciously shaping. A future that feels, finally, like home.